President Trump convened his full cabinet today to talk tax reform, tax cuts, ahead of the unveiling of the congressional Republican plan that is now expected tomorrow. Negotiations on the proposal continue at this very hour, but it is likely that the 39.6% top tax bracket for the country's highest earners will remain in place, remain at the same rate. The president says the time for lawmakers to come to agreement and pass real tax relief is now.
Our economy and our country cannot take off the way it really should, so it's really, really competitive with the rest of the world, unless we get the kind of tax cuts for our companies and our middle class, our workers, unless we get the jobs we need. It can't really take off until we get the tax cuts and reform passed.
And joining us tonight, Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, great to have you with us. And how excited are you about an immediate prospect of tax reform? And by immediate, I'm talking about before Christmas.
Well, I'm very optimistic, Lou. This is something we have to get done. The president has led the way, and he's exactly right. It's time for us to put tax cuts in place for our businesses so we can bring more jobs in this country, and for the middle class who've been hurting. And I travel the country every day. I was in Minnesota this week, and people are hurting, and they're saying, please give us relief. It is time for us to have tax cuts. The middle class is depending on us, and Republicans are fighting for it. We'd love to see some Democrats come across the aisle and support the middle class tax cuts as well.
The middle class in this country is the foundation, as you well know, of this country, and those who aspire to it, hardworking men and women, their families. This promises to be a true middle class tax cut, but it's not the only focus. We're also looking at small business rates being improved, the pass-through rate, hopefully gaining some parity with the corporate rate of 20% as it's proposed. Are these things likely to be the final architecture of Trump tax reform?
Well, we'll see what comes out of Ways and Means tomorrow. I have full confidence in Chairman Brady, and that's the first step. Then it'll go before the whole Congress. They'll get to go talk to their constituents. This is going to be a transparent, open process, but there is a recognition that people need tax cuts. We haven't had tax reform in 30 years. We are not competitive globally with our corporate tax rates. The president is leading the way. We need to get this done. And more importantly, the middle class needs to take more money home of their hard-earned wages that they need to be spending on their family and not sending to Washington, D.C.
Are we going to see the conversation, and by the way, we should point out, without this president driving this, tax reform would already be a side issue and a laggard in terms of the public agenda in this country instead of at the forefront of it. But at the same time, these tax cuts, they have to be put in place by a fellow by the name of Ryan and another fellow by the name of McConnell. Are they as committed now as they should be to push forward with this tax reform agenda?
They're absolutely committed, and we saw this when the Senate passed the budget and the House passed the budget so that we could get into reconciliation. The president absolutely has led the way. Listen, the president traveled this country during this election cycle, and he talked to the middle class of this country, and that is who he speaks for. That is who he is championing. And he is saying, it is time for you to get a tax cut. It is time for Washington to fight for the middle class, hardworking families in this country. And Republicans need to deliver on this. And I think we're in a good place, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to get this done.
You met with the president this afternoon. Care to give us a rundown on your private agenda with the president?
Well, I obviously am going to keep those conversations private. The president certainly can discuss what we talked about. But we did talk about the Virginia race a little bit, which is coming up next week. And Ed Gillespie's running tight. And we have a candidate in Virginia running for governor, and Ralph Northam, who refuses to denounce one of the most hateful, divisive, disgusting ads that have ever been aired in a political race. And I think Democrats across the board should denounce this terrible ad that's being run in Virginia.
That ad is one of the most sickening things. It was put out, by the way, fronted by Eva Longoria, the Latino Victory ad. Do we have that ad here? I just to share with it. Well, of course we don't. I lost my mind. The fact of the matter is that she is fronting an ad that is just despicable, showing people trying to run down young, apparently young Hispanics running from these folks, portrayed as the followers of Ed Gillespie. It is one of the nastiest things I've ever seen, Ronna.
It's despicable. And the fact that Ralph Northam, the candidate for governor in Virginia, refuses to denounce this. Every Democrat should be denouncing this ad. To see a person in a truck with a Gillespie sticker trying to run down little children, it feeds the worst of our country in terms of hate and division and fear. And if Democrats are going to play on this, they're looking for a bad 2018, because I think Americans across this country will reject that type of message and rhetoric.
Is it also the reason, that commercial, that Ed Gillespie's cut Northam's lead by half?
I think independent voters, I think Democrats look at this and they say, this is disgusting. Even some of the papers said, the Democrat-leaning papers said it made their stomachs turn to see an ad like this. And for them to try and play on fear and division and have a Gillespie supposed supporter run down children, it's despicable. And I call on every Democrat in every leadership position across this country to denounce this ad. And most importantly, Ralph Northam, who's running to be the leader of Virginia, to denounce this ad, which he has still yet to do.
Ronna, thanks very much for being with us. We appreciate it. Ronna McDaniel.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Thank you.